Hey there, I'm Sarah A. Chrisman, the author of the Tales of Chetzemoka, and today I'm going to be making Sago Soup. This is the soup that Addie makes at the dinner party in Delivery Delayed, so the recipe's at the end of the book. And it is also the soup that was Jenny Lind's favorite, if any of you are familiar with the famous Victorian singer. And it, additionally, is a very tasty soup. Sago soup was a particular favorite of Victorian celebrity Jenny Lind, and it was extremely popular in the late 19th century. The 1878 recipe that appears at the end of Delivery Delayed goes, "The following soup is stated by Miss Bremer to be the soup constantly served to Mademoiselle Jenny Lind as prepared by her own cook. The sago and eggs were found by her soothing to the chest and beneficial to the voice. Wash 1/4 pound of best pearl sago thoroughly, then stew it quite tender and very thick in water or thick broth. It will require nearly or quite 1 quart of liquid, which should be poured to it cold and heated slowly. Then mix gradually with it a pint of good boiling cream or milk and the yolks of 4 fresh eggs, and mingle the whole carefully with 2 quarts of strong veal or beef stock, which should always be kept boiling." So before we get started, I want to tell you just a little bit about what sago is, and a little bit about what it isn't, because it gets really confusing. So this is sago, and this is tapioca. They look really similar. They're both starches. They both generally come in little pearl form. Sago is from the trunk of a tree. It's actually the dried sap of a tree, a tropical tree. Tapioca comes from a tuberous root. A tapioca plant is not too far off of a yam or a sweet potato. And it gets even more confusing because at different points in time, depending on which one was more valuable, sometimes people selling them will call sago tapioca if tapioca happened to be making more money right then, or they'll call tapioca sago if sago happened to be more valuable at that particular point in history. But they are different. They come from different plants. They have slightly different nutritional values. And also, sago is a little chewier. Tapioca is a little mushier. Both sago and tapioca were important starches in the Victorian diet. They're both products of the tropics, but they were available worldwide thanks to the same global network of trade that brought ice harvested in cold northern countries south to the tropics. The famous Victorian cookbook, Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management, describes the manufacturing process for sago next to a recipe similar to the one I'm making today. Mrs. Beeton's description runs, "Sago. The farinaceous food of this name constitutes the pith of the sago tree, the Sagus farinifera of Linnaeus, which grows spontaneously in the East Indies and in the archipelago of the Indian Ocean. There it forms the principal farinaceous diet of the inhabitants. In order to procure it, the tree is felled and sawn in pieces. The pith is then taken out and put in receptacles of cold water where it is stirred until the flour separates from the filaments, and sinks to the bottom, where it is suffered to remain until the water is poured off, when it is taken out and spread on wicker frames to dry. To give it the round granular form in which we find it come to this country, it is passed through a colander, then rubbed into little balls and dried. The tree is not fit for felling until it has attained a growth of 7 years, when a single trunk will yield 900 pounds weight, and as an acre of ground will grow 430 of these trees, a large return of flour is the result. The best quality has a slightly reddish hue, and easily dissolved it to a jelly in hot water. As a restorative diet it is much used, and it is very easy of digestion." Sago was readily available in big cities in the Victorian era, and out here in the American West, busy housewives could order it from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. In the 20th century, sago's popularity declined in Western countries, but you can still get it online. As I've mentioned before, the internet is basically to the 21st century what the Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward catalogs were to the 19th century. And before we leave the subject of everything you always wanted to know about sago but were afraid to ask, I should point out that sago is one of humanity's oldest food sources. In a 2013 archaeological study, a group of Chinese researchers found that way back in the Neolithic period, the ancient Chinese were processing the pith of sago trees long before their descendants started growing rice. To cook your sago, just rinse it the same way you would rinse rice, add your broth, and cook it until the pearls turn clear. It should take between 45 minutes to an hour, and you should stir it occasionally to keep the sago pearls from sticking to the bottom of the pan. As for the egg yolks and cream, I find it works best to beat them together cold, then slowly heat the mixture until it thickens, stirring all the while. You want to avoid adding cold eggs to hot cream because then the eggs wind up poached. Victorian cookbooks would refer to this as the soup curdling. In Book 4 of the Tales of Chetzemoka, Delivery Delayed, when Addie serves this soup at a club dinner, she mentions that her cookbook calls it Jenny Lind's favorite soup, and Ken immediately bursts into song. Lizzie is afraid that Isaac won't get the joke, so she tries explaining that Jenny Lind is a famous soprano. He just smiles and tells her that of course he knows of Jenny Lind, the Swedish nightingale. Jenny Lind was a Victorian singing sensation whose vocal range went from B below middle C to high G, and beyond that she was an incredibly kind and generous human being. Her magnificent voice was admired around the world, and her concerts, in halls which seated thousands, constantly sold out. She gave innumerable concerts to benefit charities, as well as doing personal kindnesses whenever she saw people in need. Just one of her concerts yielded $4,000 for charity in the 1850s. Once, when a poor working girl bought a $3 ticket to one of Miss Lind's concerts, the girl told the ticket seller, "There goes half a month's wages, but I'm determined to hear Jenny Lind." When the ticket seller reported the story to Miss Lind, she gave him a $20 gold piece and ordered him to find the girl in the audience and give it to her. P.T. Barnum, who organized Miss Lind's concerts in America, wrote, quote, "With all her excellent and even extraordinarily good qualities, Jenny Lind was human, though the reputation she bore in Europe for her many charitable acts led me to believe that she was nearly perfect. I think now that her natural impulses were more simple, childlike, pure, and generous than those of almost any other person I have ever met." Unquote. Jenny Lind toured with Barnum for a while, but then she left the big stage because she disliked being on display and wanted a quiet life with her husband. She was a sweet woman who loved to sing and loved doing kind things. Sharing her favorite soup with the kind people you care for is a delicious way to remember her legacy and bring history to life. So there's my sago soup. Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up and remember to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading!